This is why these things aren't black and white.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're human beings. Bob Pittman is famous for saying, people don't fall in love with robots, they fall in love with humans. That's why they had VJs on MTV. And MTV would not be MTV without VJs.
Yeah.
There's always a humanness. We as humans will always be, drawn to that. I think it's a question of what exactly is the role of this animal on planet Earth 100 years from now? I think we underestimate how different that is going to be. Even 25 years from now, we're close to AGI, we're close to quantum computing. Look at what's happening in robotics. 25 years from now, the world is unrecognizable. And that will be the world that our kids fight and exist in, just like, we've fought and existed in this one.
And the other one I do is crisscross jump.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was the first.
But it's also an impressive one because you got to do, some of them try to rhyme, but they can't rhyme like this.
Yo.
Some of them try to rhyme, but they can't rhyme like this.
That's the
Some of them
first.
try to rhyme, but they can't.
First vinyl I ever bought.
Wow.
7-inch vinyl.
That's the Crisscross are underrated. It's a real Jermaine Dupri production.
Yeah.
It's Jermaine Dupri realizing I'm not going to be a star, so I'm going to find these kids. I'm going to make them a novelty. I'm going to make them stars, and he did it.
One of them died.
Miggity Mac Daddy.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think one of them died.
Mac Daddy.
By the way, the second Crisscross record is totally underrated.
I've never even listened to it.
Yeah, so check it out.
Yeah.
It's like post-Chronic. You know what I mean? So the music tried to kind of change to post-Chronic.
We were going to talk about technology, and we're going to end up talking about music for about an hour. Do you know what? The funny thing is the algorithms are destroying music. Is this No Country for Old Men? You know the end of No Country for Old Men?
No,
You must have seen the film No Country for Old Men.
No.
Do you watch films?
No.
Okay. The film No Country for Old Men, it's an amazing film. And it's basically a guy finds a bunch of money in the desert, steals it, and then he gets chased by the criminals who want it. It's a brutal, savage film.
Okay.
I think it's... I can't remember who the director was. But at the end, there's like two old policemen talking about it, talking about the world, and then saying it's not really for them anymore because it's like No Country for Old Men. And so my kids love some bollocks music, like drill. I think drill's bollocks.
Right.
And I think the algorithms have destroyed music. They destroyed albums for most of us, and not doing drugs.
I think that the challenge is, so we can definitely, this does really fit into my worldview because it's impossible to extract culture from technology.
Yes.
In other words, we'll never have another Beatles because we'll never have another Beatles on Ed Sullivan. We'll never have another Dead Kennedys because, if you were 19 years old in 1979 and you had some ideas you wanted to share with your peers, how are you going to do it? No one's going to let you on the radio. No one's going to let you on television. They're not going to put you in the newspaper. You're going to make a zine, like a fanzine with a photocopier and try to, distribute it to your friends, or you're going to make a 7-inch.
That's how I started.
Making zines?
I did a scene called The Plug.
I did not know that. What was it like?
I managed 4 issues. I interviewed Korn, Pantera, Slayer.
What year was this?
God, I was 15. So, and
You interviewed
32.
Pantera when you were 15?
Yeah, that was a phone call. Them and Slayer were phone calls.
Wow.
Korn was in person. It was their first UK show, Astoria 2. I was the first person to interview them.
Wow.
Biohazard, I interviewed. Dog Eat Dog. All the hardcore and punk at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway.
So, what I always say, and I wrote this in my chapter in the Beastie Boys book.
Yeah.
Anyone who ever made a zine with a photocopier and a Sharpie understood the internet the moment they saw it.
Yes, instantly.
Right? Because you're like, oh, here's a way I can get to people without the gatekeepers.
Dude, listen, so this is so funny. It's so funny you should say it. So my friend Tom is the one who I made it with, right? And we used to go to his dad's estate agency, like property sales company. And we sit there with a photocopier, and page after page after page, all day long, staple it, and then go and sell it to concerts. It'll take all day to make like 300 copies.
Exactly.
That's why we stopped in the end, because it was too much. The internet starts, and I'm like, So so that summer I was living in High Wycombe, I started to learn to code HTML4 because I was going to bring back the zine online. Then in the end, I just got paid so much for making websites, I stayed there.
By the way, my version of this is in the early 90s, in the mid 90s, we had a magazine called Grand Royal. right?
Yes.
The Beastie Boys had a magazine called Grand Royal. And then in the year 2000, we made GrandRoyal.com as, this online magazine and kind of, record label merch company. I mean, Grand Royal existed as a record label before me. And we reinvented it in kind of 1999 because of the internet. And I've even thought that I've had that thought, almost every year I still own GrandRoyal.com. And every year I have the thought, and I talk to Mike D about it, like, is this the year? Should we bring it back?
Bring it back.
I mean, there's a...
Will they ever
just
play
a great
again?
way to get up. But the thing is if Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys was 19 today, he wouldn't start a band. He would start a podcast or a YouTube channel or a TikTok, and that's why you can't extract. So I don't think it's just that. I think that technology is. I don't think it's just that algorithms have killed music, right? I think it's just that times have changed. You know, what's a great listen?
Yeah.
Is the history of rock music in 500 songs.
Okay.
And because what's interesting about it is it's a podcast.
When was
it's
it made?
Epic. It's still ongoing. I think he's around 200 right now.
Okay. Let me ask you. How many of the songs in it were from the last decade?
Well, he'll get there.
Oh, he's doing it just purely over time.
Yeah.
Because this is the question.
He starts with Benny Goodman. And I think he's up to like Kashmir.
You remember my producer Danny?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Do you know the argument I have with him about music? I'm like, if you do the greatest 100 rock songs of all time, how many are in there from the last decade?
Here's the thing. This is also this might be old country. New. What is it? New Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men. It might be that. it might be case in point.
Don't edit that.
Senior moments. Case in point. Here's what I say. This is a great exercise. Whenever somebody tells you music was better before,
it was. Yep.
Here's what you have to ask them. Here's my question for you then.
Yeah.
We can do this. I don't have my phone, but what year do you think it was great?
There was that year, I think, where 10, Siamese Dream,
90.
Soundgarden is about then.
Yeah, 90.
That was about peak.
The thing is, though, is if you go look at the Billboard Hot 100 from that year, sucks. And so here's the problem. In that year, we were looking at the underground.
Yeah.
And then today, we're judging music based on the Billboard Hot 100. And that's where we're old.
Well, so I guess that's fair
because I'll even give you an example. I said this Dead Kennedys thing out loud lately that like, oh, punk rock can't exist. Somebody sent me a pile of contemporary punk rock records and I just started going down them and every single one of them were incredible and I'd never heard of any of them.
So there's an album I've just discovered from a band, which is the first time I think in maybe 10, 15 years where an album's blown my mind. There's a band called Navarro. They're like a hardcore metalcore band, but if you heard it, it's really experimental. But my point to Danny was, it's not that. It's like the top 100 albums of all time, like the top.
Yeah.
How many are from the last decade? I said to him, and I stand by this thesis, the last great record ever made was Back to Black.
Yeah. To me, that even is post some of my favorite records. You know what I mean?
Sure,
So,
sure.
But I hear you. I do think there is a technology thing with this though, right? Because, the record itself, like if you think about it, the album was a pretty short period of time. The great thing about the history of rock music in 500 songs is that podcast could also be called the history of technology and music. It could also be called the history it could be called the history of racism in America in the 20th century.
Right.
It could be called a history of exploitation of artists in the 20th century. But also you realize that there was no such thing as the album before, Blonde on Blonde, really.
Yeah,
right?
Kids don't care anymore.
Yeah, and they didn't care before, by the way, right? And you realize other great things, like the only reason we really have music radio is because of television.
But did you ever queue up for an album? Did you ever go before?
Hell yeah. 1992, Check Your Head, Beastie Boys. I stood in line.
So I did it for Wu-Tang Forever.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Which would probably been kind of disappointing once you got that one on the because that was no 36 chambers.
But it opens well.
No offense, Bobby.
It opens well.
Yeah,
it opens really, really well. But yeah, no, it was disappointing. I mean, they did a few songs after that.
Yeah.
But that's the point on the technology. And then I go back, because I was thinking to say to you, like, how do we start this? How do we start this interview?
I think the combination of technology and culture is a
well,
it's a real, that is like not a small, it's a fun topic, but it's also very real. Because I think also if you think about this, what Balaji talks about, right? The move from God to state to network.
Yeah.
It's all there. We are living in a world now where we value the opinions of our network neighbors more than our physical neighbors.
Sure.
But that's what you and I did, and it's why we made zines, right? It's why I read Thrasher magazine and I wasn't on the football team. You know what I mean? Because I lived in this, my network didn't exist in the small town in Goshen, Indiana where I lived. It lived in Thrasher magazine. It lived in Maximum Rock and Roll. And then that's also why the internet was not like, oh my God, what is this? It was like, oh my God, I can actually meet people who like the same music as me.
And venues, existed in venues.
Yeah.
So my network was who I skateboarded with on a Friday night, a venue called Esquires in Bedford, but it was also the Water Rats in London. It was also the Astoria too, because you go to shows, you see the same people, and then you go back to school and you think everyone here's a dumbass. But let me just say this, because I was thinking of it on the way over, I was thinking, how do I start this today? And I think I've got a way of starting, but it's a hard way of starting things in that, okay, when you're 10 years old, 12 years old, you've got to do middle school, senior school, and then I might go to college and then I'll get a job, right? But if you've got my daughter now's 15, she's going to finish school in 3 years. If she goes to university, it's 6 years. And the pace of change that we're seeing now is, how do you even prepare them for that?
Yeah.
And if we're sending kids to school at the moment to memorize facts while they've got a supercomputer with AI, what are we actually doing? How do you prepare?
I completely agree.
How the fuck do you prepare a kid now?
Yeah. Well, so I guess I should tell my personal experience here. I had a kid when I was 17.
Yep.
And she's 35 now. I also have a 19-year-old and 11-year-old, and I have a granddaughter as well. So
you never told me you're a granddad.
Yeah. So I think about this question a lot, and especially because schools here in France are from 20 years ago in America, right? So I've had very different education experiences where I homeschooled my older daughter for a number of years. She went on to go to MIT for undergrad, and she has a PhD from Stanford. My middle daughter went to a progressive private school in the U.S., which I would actually posit is the best model we have, because, to answer your question, they don't try to teach you facts and memorization. They try to make a good person who can think for themselves.
Okay.
And I think that's the best shot we have. Make people that are, try to create people that are good individuals who can solve problems when confronted with one.
Yeah.
Know how to use the tools that are at their disposal, because those tools are going to evolve a lot over the next few years, and that can really think about their place in society and the future. That's the best we have. And then I see what they do in French schools, which is memorization of facts and French history. And I say, why in the world would you do this?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Because you are basically you're creating people for industrialization.
Hold on, you're basically training an LLM.
Yeah, no.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
it's a very basic shitty LLM.
And I think I do think it is a real disservice. So I would like to think that is, but I also think that culturally in the U.S. If there's at a progressive American school, they're gonna, if there's new research tomorrow, they're going to try to integrate that research into the school today. That's just the mentality of a progressive school in the U.S. Whereas if you ask them at a French school, why do they still do it this way? Their answer will be, because that's how we've always done it. Right. And I think it does change. Mm-hmm. Our daughter has changed schools over time, and the school is actually quite good, I would say, on a relative basis. But if you that's comparing it to other French schools, and if you compare it to that progressive LA education, I've been in France now for 10 years, and I simply haven't encountered anything like that here. But I think, like many things here, 20 years from now that will exist here. But I think that they're just a little tradition is so valued here that they're very slow to change.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
You've met my son, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, school wasn't for him, right? If he was here, he'll tell you he didn't like it. He was a creative. He liked painting, but he went to university, did art. 8 months in, I got a letter from the university. Actually, it was for him, and I just opened it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, your attendance rate is 38%. You need to come and see us. So I went up to. No, he came home for Easter, and I was like, "What's going on?" And he'd been having a good time. Yeah. He was failing. He didn't like it. And I said, you got two choices, I think I said to him. I said, you can go back, retake the year on a course you don't want to do, on something you're not enjoying, or you can come and work for me. But if you work for me, I'm going to ride you fucking hard on this. So he said, I'll come and work for you. So he's been a producer on the podcast now for nearly 2 years, right? He had to learn firstly just to edit clips and put those out. I didn't help him. He went and learned it. He's then sat in 2 to 3 interviews a week with people like yourself, Liz Truss, various politicians, economists, and watched a deep interview, a 2-hour interview, and then he sat in a car with me when we discussed it on the way home.
Yeah.
And he's now employed. He's got a good salary. He's got savings. He's got Bitcoin. He's got no debt. He's kind of figured the world out. And then he's got all his friends who've come back from university. They can't get a fucking job. Ian, they can't get a job. People cannot get all those kind of like graduate jobs are now being handled by mid-tier people who use an AI instead of grads. And so he's just by luck has been positioned ready for where the world's going. He's like ahead of the curve for his age. But there are tens of thousands of kids who are starting university courses now for things to learn things that are going to be wiped out by AI. And there's people who are leaving who can't get jobs because of AI. Yeah. And I'm like, what do we do about that?
Well, look, I think, a few observations there. First of all, what is college for? College is not for learning facts, right? College is that period of time when you're too old to live at home and you're too young to be in the real world.
Yeah.
And you go out there. So when he was out there having a good time, to me, that's what you're supposed to be doing in college. When I look at my college experience, I got super lucky. I did things with digital music outside of my computer science coursework, which is what became my life, So I had a good basis. I studied computer science at Indiana University. It was a good education, but really everything I learned like fucking around with computers outside of my classes. You know what I mean? Everything that I used, I came with that. And I think that's the case I don't think that's new, And I think it's also just a fact that it's the things that make us different that make us successful. I don't think that's any different. I look at kids that I was in, I dropped out of grad school. I did a year of a PhD program and then dropped out to go on tour with the Beastie Boys. I have a friend who I blinked and he had 2 PhDs, and I was like, wow, that could have been me. I could be Dr. Rogers. At the same time, he's had a great career, of course. He has a degree, in computer science and a degree in cognitive science, but we worked together at Apple. But I was the GM of music, and he was, an engineer elsewhere in the company. So I think in some ways my career has been more interesting, at least for me, right? Because of the weirdness that I injected into it, like the off-path things.
Hold on, didn't you both just find the right path?
Yeah, we found that. No, I agree. It's not a criticism at all. Yeah. My point is that I think that life is a story, and your CV is a story, and your job is to imagine a story and then live it. Mm-hmm. You've done that. I've done that. Lots of our friends have done that. I think what too many people do is they live someone else's story, or they think maybe the state owes them a story. You know what I mean? Like the crass, do they owe us a living? Of course they do. Of course they do.
You and I are different. We're weirdos.
I think that if you look, the point I was going to make too is I hear what you're saying, but I grew up in Goshen, Indiana. In so many ways, my life is this story of America, right? My parents grew up at this amazing time to be an American, post-war America, where you could have a factory job and buy a house and feed your family. It's a very short period of time. And, I went to college and I was the first person in my family to go to college. I studied computer science. I moved to a blue state because of politics? No, because it's where the jobs were for what I did. What would be the life for me if I had stayed in Indiana? It's not, we're talking now about the knowledge jobs that have been removed. Those blue collar jobs were removed 25 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like a continual hollowing out. So it's not the start of something, it's the continuation of something. And so you're always trying to move up market away from that.
But is it a hockey stick at the moment?
I don't know. I think that I don't know. I think every generation thinks that, like, you know, their parents don't get it and their kids don't appreciate it, but we can't all be right, you know?
Yeah, but you and I are weirdos. Let's be honest.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, we're weirdos.
But is there another path? This is my thing is there a mainstream, right? Has there ever been? You know, maybe, yeah. And I think, you know, I have a friend who's a Brit and a kind of a lover of history. And he's the one that said to me, post-war America is the greatest time to have been born anywhere ever in the history of humanity, right? Because you had all the chips at that moment. And I think that part of what we're realizing now, and a lot of what, you know, gets covered on your show is largely the concept of the fourth turning, right? Yeah. And I think it makes a lot of sense because you have that like long period of peace, you know, post World War II that can't go on forever. And then the question is, what do we all do with it? You know, and my philosophy is that criticism is only allowed when it comes with an alternate proposal.
Okay.
Right. And so, you know, if we're going to kind of criticize the state we're in, we need to propose something else.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it.
I had to realize that once I moved here to France because I was starting working at LVMH. And what I realized is that there's this cultural thing where they like to shit on your idea. and then what they do is they, over time, then they kind of like, well, if it turns out you were right, they just stay quiet and people forget that they were negative back then. And then if it turns out you were wrong, they say, I told you so. And so I had to like actually say, listen, I put an idea on the table. I want to hear a better one or shut the fuck up. Yeah. And I think that's the way I want to live generally.
I'm conscious you're a Yank and I'm a Brit and we're in a room full of French people.
They don't mind.
They're not going to come up with the pitchforks and attack us.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, look, so again, I go through the lens of my children. My son's good. We've sorted him out. Like I've proven the model. I've proven the model that memorizing facts was a waste of time for him. He just needed to be doing things, learning skills, and pushed hard. But yeah, he just needed about that learning skills and being given real knowledge. So I look at my daughter and I go, I right now my theory on my daughter is every single day she spends in school now is pretty much a waste of time.
I feel the same way.
But I'm cool with it. She can finish this year. But does she go and do A levels? Does she do senior school? In my view, it is a waste of time. Personally, I would rather take her out and say, I'll homeschool you, or you pick something you want to do, or you come and work for me. So when I went to see Balaji recently, I went out to his network state to see it. It was such a fascinating moment with him. So I'm walking around with him and Connor, and he's talking about like university being mainly a waste of money and time at the moment. And so I explained the Connor story, and he was like, "Yeah, this is just the modern version of your son coming to work on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
He's half your DNA. He thinks half like you. He's now working on the farm, preparing to take over the farm. It makes total sense. Like, that's what we need to go back to, really, in a modern world." I was like, huh. So then I was like, my daughter needs to come and work on the farm. But so that's what I think for her. But then I think wider, because we're in this world where, you know, I did the panel yesterday where it's got the convergence of Bitcoin, AI, quantum.
It was a great panel, by the way. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Well, there's smart people on it. We've got these convergence of these technologies where we head towards this potential singularity. We've got infinite compute. We're going to have infinite knowledge, potentially infinite energy. And does that take us to this incredible world, or does it take us this fucking horrific dystopian world? Well, I don't actually know.
No, and I think it depends on who you are and what and where you sit in that new world, right? Just like everything else in the past, you know. Again, as somebody who grew up in Indiana and had a kid at 17, I probably narrow escaped like living in a trailer park and working at Walmart and eating mayonnaise sandwiches. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely another outcome to this story that could have been had it not been for, you know, circumstances that I kind of lucked into or made my own luck or whatever. So I think that, you know, my point is that we always have that. You know, a couple things. First of all, like there's a great book called The Case Against Education, written by the same guy who wrote the the graphic novel Open Borders. I recommend reading both of them. The way he puts it, though, is about like kind of the way that we've built the educational system. It's sort of like if you're at a concert and you can't see, standing up is a great strategy unless everyone stands up. And that's kind of what we're doing with education, is we just kind of are pushing people through this system. And what we're really doing is creating a stratification and a hierarchy, right? And I see it. I really see it in action. Again, my oldest daughter has a PhD from Stanford. Like she, we'll have, we all have our own challenges in life, no matter where we are in that hierarchy. But can I get a job is probably not one of them, so it's a system, and I think that's a way to acknowledge it. And then, of course, that system will change. And I think there are some interesting ways to change it. If you look at what Xavier Niel is doing here in Paris with École 42, École 42, 42 being the meaning of life from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He has a free school where the only thing you do from the moment you start to the moment you end is code, right? And people talk about like AI taking away coding. I really don't think that that's true. I think we're all computer operators right now. Like every one of us, our job effectively as a computer operator, we manage information. And now we're going to be AI operators, on some level.
For now.
And look, I think I do think that, it's always the case that, there are givens here. You can look at the past and know some things about where we are right now. Every technological revolution is a bubble. Carlotta Perez, Technological Revolutions and Financial Capital. It's always a bubble. The bubble bursts, and then you get 30 years of sustained growth. You should expect the same thing with respect to AI. It's a big conversation right now. Of course it is. But secondly, also, we always overestimate the impact in the short term, and we underestimate it in the long term. So I think we overestimate how many jobs it's going to remove in the near term. I think we underestimate the fact that it is going to materially change the relationship between labor and capital, right? And if you read the new book that's called what's it called? The Last Economy.
Oh, I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, you'll like this one. And you should read his Wikipedia page too, so you know who it is you're dealing with. I mean, he's a controversial character.
Did you already recommend this to me?
I think I might have. Yeah.
Did you send this by Carl Scandon? Oh no, this is Economy.
Yeah, The Last Economy. But he's pointing to a world where human labor actually has a negative value, and that there's your change in the relationship between labor and capital. But I don't know that we can imagine what that world is, or what our place within it is.
But what's your thesis? Like, what would you think?
To be honest, I really don't know. But I have I think if you look, another book I love from a number of years ago is that book Factfulness, which points to all of the facts that, we live in this is a better time to be alive today than, ever in human history.
Yes.
Right. And I think it's, and the stats point to that. Now, I think also if you read How to Change Your Mind, the Michael Pollan book about psychedelics, which I think is a great book. One of the things that really jumps out in that book for me is that, we create this world, and then our children grow up in it. They're actually better suited for that world than we are. In a way, this comes back to the music conversation.
Well, right? That comes to the politics conversation.
They're better suited. Politics, I feel like, is maybe slightly different because structurally, we live in two worlds at once. And this is where Balaji's network state comes in my view, because we live in this world. I always think about we live in two worlds at once. I don't know if you remember when, somebody went to Walmart in Texas and was shooting Mexicans.
I remember.
And I always think and really the Charlie Kirk story is a version of this, right? Where a human being lives in this physical world. And in the physical world, if they go to their neighbors' houses and they knock on their doors and they say, hey, I'm going to go to Walmart and shoot some people, they'll call the cops, right? But if they go into that right forum, the network, right, with those like-minded people. In other words, like if I try to find in my neighbors the 100 people who share my ideals, I might have a very hard time. But if I ask the Mark Zuckerberg machine, help me find some people who share my ideals, they go, boom, here they are. And then I go, hey, I'm going to go to Walmart and shoot some people. And they go, do it, bro. Right? we live in both of those worlds at once. And then my question is, how do you have a two-party or even a multi-party democracy when that's true? And
you have two different personalities in those.
Yeah.
Because I could be a dick online, but I would never be the way I am online in...
It's just like people in cars, right? People, they're behind the wheel and their windows are up and they're honking their horn and they're shouting. And then if they like got out and stood face to face, they'd be like, hey, dude, I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. Let's forget about it.
Yeah. And I think it's very, I think it's very hard. I have another, I think I've told you this before, but I had a great experience a couple weeks ago. I got to meet my favorite contemporary author, a guy named John Higgs, lives down in Brighton.
Okay.
And don't meet your heroes, but this was not one of those cases. Like
okay.
It was everything I had hoped for intellectually.
Okay.
And we had a really nice time, and I hope I get to hang with him again. But he's written amazing books. A book about the KLF that you would love. He wrote his first book was a book about Timothy Leary that was great. He's written kind of a revisionist history of the 20th century that is amazing. He's written 2 books about William Blake. He wrote a book about Doctor Who, which I don't know anything about, but I'll be curious what you think. And then he wrote an amazing book which is about, did you know that the first Beatles single and the first James Bond film came out on the same October day in 1962?
No, I did not, but that's incredible.
He uses that as a vehicle to kind of talk about the last 70 years of British history,
wow,
British culture. You probably love it. He's incredible. Maybe have him on the show. Actually, he's really fantastic. But he said something that has stuck in my brain, which is that in the old media world, you kind of had this mainstream thing. Like as someone pointed out a long time ago, I think Posner wrote a piece in 2000 where he was pointing out that Fox News is really a product of the internet. Because in the old world, if you have 2 newspapers, they kind of drift toward the middle to get the widest audience. But when you have an unlimited spectrum, you really have to have a point of view, right, to gather audiences. And the point that John was making, which I think is correct, is that now we have these extreme viewpoints which actually get a lot of attention. And so it's almost like the opposite of the middle point of view really doesn't represent everyone, but these extreme points of view really don't represent everyone either.
Yeah, it's so...
He made a very specific point that I think is worth pointing out. He said he has a friend who's trans, and when he talks to his friend, he's like, there's this incredible irony that the theme is that there's trans hate. He said, but me as a trans person, I feel more understood than I did 25 years ago. And I think we both know that. We both know that we are more, I think about it when I was growing up, what it meant even to be gay before the TV show Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, where now, in around the people that I know, I'm not going to make any judgments, but there is no judgment.
Well,
right?
Have you heard Chappelle on this?
A bit.
So he talks about this trans woman called Daphne at his show. And he talks about it, he said, and she's like laughing through the entire show, cracking up, laughing at every joke. He said he sat there and he's like, yeah, I got some trans jokes coming. Anyway, so he tells his trans jokes. Daphne is like crying with laughter through them. And he's like, phew. Anyway, he says he finishes the show and Daphne's at the bar. He goes up and has a drink with Daphne and chats to her. And he just explains, he said, I was a bit worried about the trans jokes and how you would react. And Daphne was like, because you're making jokes, you're normalizing who we are. Like the gay jokes, you don't really tell as many gay jokes anymore. Yeah. Because
it's not that funny anymore.
It's not that funny anymore.
It's not that extreme.
By doing this, you're making it part of culture and you're normalizing it and you're normalizing me.
And so I think the thing that's important for us as consumers is, this, I would say that mainstream press never spoke for me, right? When there's nothing that I was first written about in mainstream press in 1995, and I never wanted to read mainstream press again because you're like, wow, if this is sort of the surface level that they cover things, why would I read anything else you write, right? But I would also say that these extreme press viewpoints don't speak for us either. And I think that's important because if it feels like we're becoming more polarized, as everyone says, I think that's just as fake as when are we going to have more centrist political dialogue, which was a conversation I heard at the JP Morgan conference back in 2021 by a bunch of old billionaires. And I was like, you guys are asking the question, when are we going to go back to having 3 channels on television?
No, what they've really
what?
done, they've connected the two extremes to have a fight.
Yes.
And we're like there with the popcorn.
Exactly. And that's it. Like, this is what I keep saying. Like, whenever someone brings this up to me, I'm like, you're falling for it. This is exactly what they want you to do. They want you to be up in arms around this. No, let's come back to Jello Biafra. Let's do our own research. Like DYOR, when I listen to the Dead Kennedys, I've been listening to Dead Kennedys nonstop because my friend Glenn Friedman is writing a Dead Kennedys book, and he's given me an opportunity to write something for it. So I want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And it's such an important part of my DNA that I'm like studying it, and I'm realizing that one of the things I got from it was Dead Kennedys had a song in 1979 that was kind of anti-left. California Uber Alles. I am Governor Jerry Brown. My aura smiles and never frowns. Your kids will meditate in school, right? Then Reagan comes into power, and he makes a new song. We've got a bigger problem now, right? I am Emperor Ronald Reagan, born again with fascist cravings. Your kids are going to pray in school, right? And I realize now that what Jello taught me was look out for both sides. Neither of them are speaking for you. They're both trying to control you. Do your own research. Comes back to Bitcoin, I think. By the way, I wore this for you today.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin misfits.
Love that.
So I think that we need to be another line that I think is that I keep giving to people right now comes back to our music conversation. You should pay attention to what mainstream media says as much as you listen to pop radio. And so, in other words, if you are listening to pop music radio or if you are reading mainstream press, I doubt I have a lot to talk to you about.
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
So okay, let me talk to you about 2 dilemmas then.
Okay.
So, have a podcast. The primary delivery channel is YouTube. YouTube allows you, when you post out a show, to test the thumbnail and test the title. Shock and bait works.
Yep.
And I don't go to the full end of the extreme, such and such exposed, blah, blah, blah. But like if you put the UK is in crisis, it's going to do better than let's talk about the UK. And so I have a choice right now in time. We've been doing the show for a year, and when we get the first titles that come out, I'm always with Con. I'm like, I can't do that. But we do a little bit of bait, and I'm like, should I be doing this? Like, it performs, you get more listeners. We're basically, we've got the advert selling the juicy cheeseburger, and then we've given you a really good steak, right? But like, should I be doing it? Or should I be the person who goes, my interview is with Ian Rogers, and we talk about music, technology, and culture, and then just fuck it, what will be, will be. So that's my first one.
I'm going to channel one of my oldest friends, rapper, the Paranorm, who explained the universe to me one day when I was asking him a question like this about something, and I don't even remember what it was, but I just remember his answer, which is he goes, "Yo, hoes gotta eat."
You see, but that's the point. But are you contributing to the slop and the mess?
Sure, of course you are. But I mean, look, let's come back to Dead Kennedys for a second. Dead Kennedys, I remember the guy in my high school who thought "Kill the Poor" was a funny song about killing people, which it's not. So the shock was the bait, and the politics was on the other side. When if you came for the shock, what you found was like libertarianism in a way, and so I don't know, Jello would probably hate me saying libertarianism, but you know what I mean? What I got from it was free thinking, and there was something much deeper. Like, let's lynch the landlord isn't about killing someone. It's about living in a slum, and so, and maybe also, you could say something like NWA, right, in the 80s, was shocking. The word, the name NWA, the language they were using, and but at the same time, there was a social message behind it. So I think it's okay to do that. I was listening to Out of Step by Minor Threat this week.
Minor Threat,
and
God.
I actually was like, I would love to do an interview with Ian MacKaye on this because I have two questions for him I've never heard him answer. One, the music is just so good. The music is better than it needed to be. How did it get there? The other, though, is he's just saying motherfucker a lot.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that kind of drew me in as a 15-year-old. Like, oh, he's saying something you're not supposed to say. At the same time, I found something else in it. I found straight edge. I found, don't smoke, don't drink, don't fuck. At least I can fucking think. Like, so maybe the F word brought me in, but I heard the rest.
Did you ever
So maybe you can hit that. Maybe the shot could bring people in, but maybe, they'll be like, oh, and hold on. I got an idea from it too.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. But by the way, just complete tangent. Did you ever get to do a punk rock gig at CBGB's?
No.
Yeah.
Never, ever.
So imagine Minor Threat at CBGB's.
No way.
No, I didn't. But imagine you get to do that.
Yeah, or Bad Brains.
Okay, so then the second dilemma is a bigger one. Okay, I always felt like growing up, I was kind of middle of the road. Like I was a bit left. I like free thinking, didn't care. Like let's look after people, let's be good people. But I was brought up a little bit conservative as I was sent to a private school. But when I get into the world of Bitcoin, and then I look at the shape of the world that we're in, I look at the money, I look at the debt, look at the inflation, the jobs being lost, I cannot help but look at government with a very, very critical eye. I basically hate the government. I struggle to see a world where you can get rid of them, but I kind of hate them. And then when I write about things like on Twitter or Facebook, it always tends to be kind of libertarian, conservative economics, right? But there's a world of people who are my friends, my old friends, who are from the left, who basically think I'm now a fascist.
Right, yeah.
And I maybe sound like a bit of a fascist sometimes because I'm saying, what are the incentives, what are the economics of these decisions? These are the bad outcomes. And I feel I'm being sucked into this world where I sound like a fascist at times. Look, to them, I don't think I am. And it's that choice. It's very easy to be middle of the road. I love everyone. I like everyone. I'm going to be everyone's friend. Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. Let's go and have a drink. Or be an opinion leader. Said, no, this is fucking bullshit. What the government doing there is bullshit. If you have unlimited welfare, and you have a burdensome tax system, all your rich people are going to leave the country. You're going to have to raise taxes on the middle class. You're going to crush the middle class, but you're going to have to borrow money, which means you're going to print money, which means you're going to have inflation. So you have to have a sensible system. All my lefty friends think I'm insane. And I'm like, how do you navigate that, Ian? How do you navigate that world?
Well, here would be, I have a comment and then I have direct advice.
Okay.
which you can take it or leave it because I think you're good at doing it the way that you do it, and and I think actually navigating that in letting people hear you navigate that is actually good because I've had my version of that, because I left Silicon Valley for France, and look, when I was in the music business, I was just in the music business, and really truly, as you can tell from this conversation, music's the only thing I'm actually qualified to talk about. And I came to the luxury business.
That's untrue.
Here in France. And
sorry, that's untrue.
Well,
we've been friends for how long now? 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, 4 years.
Completely untrue.
Thank
That's
you.
the only thing.
I appreciate that, but I really feel that way where also I can talk passionately about a 7-inch for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't talk passionately about politics for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? I get exhausted and I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. But what I found, coming from music to luxury, it's the greatest thing you could ever do because the music people love luxury and the luxury people love music. So everyone thinks you're, great. It's like when that was lovely. Now I hit the eject button and come to Ledger and do crypto. And then FTX happens. And there are a whole lot of people, honestly, that were just like, let's not talk to Ian for a while. I talked about this on Rick Rubin's podcast a little bit. I have enough punk rock in me to really not give a shit and to no, okay, well, now I know who my real friends are. That's cool. And by the way, I'm also friends with, as you know, both Kid Rock and Kevin Spacey. So, a lot of people don't like me, I guess, for having actually looking at individuals in the eye as people and loving them as people, loving them as brothers. Do Kid Rock and I see eye to eye on every issue? No, but did I see eye to eye with my brother? Who rest in peace, on every issue either? No. But he's still my brother and I would still do anything for him, right? So I think you sort of find out like those are just life lessons. I think though that the actual answer for me, I just stay continually curious. I want to know things. I want to know. That's why I won't listen to mainstream press on any topic. If I want to know about something, I'm going to read a book on that topic. Like I'm going to try to find what is the most definitive book by the expert on this topic, and I'm going to try to read that and actually have a nuanced opinion on it. And I think, if you look at Rick Rubin, that was going to be my example. Rick, he lets other people speak. He has lots of views when you talk to him one-on-one that as public as he is, he wouldn't share publicly, not because he's ashamed of them, but because he just feels like I'm not the expert and it's not my place to share on these things. So instead, since he's a curious person, he gets the experts and he puts them in front of a microphone and he asks them the questions and he lets them pontificate on that. And then he adds that kind of to his worldview continually. And that I think is, and that's what you do with your show as well, right? Like so I think that, look, I'm just a skateboarder from Indiana. You're a zine maker, from Bedford, and a bar owner and a podcast creator. And what you've really just been is curious. I don't think you need to have an opinion on any of these things publicly. I think that what you can do is have other people and say, hey, which is what you do. I listened, to your most recent podcast last night. It's exactly what you do. You're constantly saying, I don't get this. Explain it to me.
Yeah, and do you know what the problem is? It's like you can interview people from completely different ends of the spectrum, and you end up sitting there and going, oh yeah, you've made a good point.
Right.
And then you get somebody who would disagree with them and go, oh yeah, shit, you've made a good point.
That's what it means to be human, I think. And by the way, like it is embedded in our LLMs, right? One of the hardest things to get an LLM to do is to have an opinion. Because it will, if you ask it anything, it'll always kind of tell you, well, if your priority is this and this and this, then you should go this way. But if your priority is this and this and this, you should go this way. And by the way, that's reality. You know what I mean? Like, austerity is great in what it fixes, except for the people that it hurts, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it.
An economy running red hot is great, except for the cliff that you ultimately drive off of, right? What are you prioritizing? And like this is the dilemma that we are in. But I do think that's why I think these structural issues are so interesting. I also think that we have to remember it's just not a zero-sum game, right? People love to hate on Yuval Harari these days, but I loved *Sapiens*. Especially what it taught me was just that the fundamental question is, what do we want to want? You have to start there. And if we don't agree on that, we won't agree on the solution. What's the outcome we're driving toward? 11 billion people. Okay, 11 billion people with what? Even what? I mean,
You can't collectively agree on that. So there's your libertarian argument. We should all be just left the fuck alone as much as possible.
Well, I mean, prioritize lifestyle in some ways, right? Because, I'm a skateboarder from Indiana. I don't think I'm going to solve this problem. And the last thing I think actually a bigger problem is like, how are we going to find great people to be in politics?
Well, that's the biggest problem in politics right now.
Why would you want that job?
Yeah.
You really have to be a masochist.
It is
to want to do that.
It's an ongoing situation. I've been courted for it, and I've discussed it. I think I discussed it in that William Clouston show that you listened to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's
so this is the choice.
Being a parent is a very rewarding and extremely thankless job. By definition, they shouldn't thank you.
No,
they didn't ask to be born. But man, I think that probably like being a politician must be.
Well, here's the choice.
Bad as it gets.
Depending on your situation. Like if it was you or I, it is, if I choose to do it, I'm going to be very busy. I'm not going to be able to earn any proper money because I'm going to be doing the job of a politician, which doesn't actually relatively pay well. That some people are listening going, what the fuck are you on about? But like if you're a successful business person, it doesn't pay well. You got press intrusion. Every single word you say or have said in the past is going to be used against you. 50% of the public perhaps are going to hate you.
Yep.
And you're going to be fighting to do what you think is right, not be able to make change. And occasionally You're going to have to support something you disagree with because of the whip, because of party loyalty. And at the end of it, you're probably spat out and either forgotten about or remembered as something bad or has made a mistake or as whether it's a decision you made some point along your life or like an affair you had, something will happen. And that's it. And you're everything. What's the point?
I agree with you. And you know what? With all that said, as you're saying, I'm thinking about it because, Pascal and I have had the pleasure, truly, of going to Washington and walking the Hill 3 times over the past 4 years. And the quality of people you meet and the quality of intellect is shockingly good and high. And people who really care a lot. I'm thinking of, Tom Emmer at the very top of that list, and many others that we've met on both sides of the aisle in Washington who are people. And the nice thing about being in America is they are often people who have run businesses. So they have real experience trying to exist inside the economy, and they know what the challenges are. And they do exactly what you said, which is they trade. They're like, if I want to get this, which I think is important, I'm going to have to give up that.
House of cards.
And man, I do feel like I when I talk to my American friends these days, there's a lot of oh man, it's really messed up in America. It must be, nice to be out of here. And I really think I feel being where I am, I don't think you guys realize how good the system is there. And that might sound crazy. But what I mean is that and also having seen how the sausage is made a bit, again, it comes back to that, democracy is the worst except for all the others. It really does. There is something about it that does still work. And I think we've felt that in the crypto world over the past year. There is something. And by the way, as kooky and messed up as it is, I wish we didn't have to deal with the stories around, Trump's crypto fortune. That's not helpful for us in my opinion. At the same time, if you look at the work that David Sachs is doing and the work that Sriram is doing around AI, the work that Bo Hines did with stablecoin, it's sane by comparison, if I may, right? And so I think that there is something about the system that does still work. I also think that we need to remember that it's not supposed to be easy. Mm-hmm. When you run a business, every day is hard. Yeah. Every day is a fight, and then then eventually you can look behind you with 2020 vision, right? And I think the same thing in politics. Everything seems like a mess. Every day seems like a fight. But if you'd have told my dad when he was a kid that someday we would have gay marriage and legalize marijuana, he would have spit his coffee on the table, right? You know what I mean? Yet the system moves on. And there are some things hiding in plain sight now, what they've done with stablecoins is going to have global impact, and it's not a small thing. And yet people still don't really get the impact of it.
Well, there's incentive alignment within politics there. That's the problem we have in the UK right now. Yeah. There is no incentive alignment. If you look at the Labour Party front bench, there's no entrepreneurs in there. So there's no incentive alignment. So when they make policy decisions, they're not making those policy decisions knowing to not to be able to get to sleep on a Friday night because you're thinking about payroll and you're looking at the bank account and going, we've had a bad month and it looks like it's going to get worse next month and next month. And then they bring in a new tax or a new rule or a new regulation that makes it even harder. You don't have you want incentive alignment with your politics, which means you need, I think, really, what are the most important things? The economy, law and order. So I think within politics, you want people who run businesses and people who, not lawyers, because they grift the system. You want people who've worked in the police. Yeah. You want people who worked in the armed forces. But at the moment, this Labour Party, it is lawyers, trade unionists, and charity workers. And no disrespect to them as professions directly, but I do not think they make good politicians because a trade unionist, they know how to lobby and pressure what a small group of people need. Yeah. That isn't good for government.
So let me posit a solution because I agree with you.
Yes.
And
here's my criticism. You give me the solution.
No. You actually said it already in terms of what kind of people you want to be there. Because I want to try to tie these two ideas together. I think it is true. Again, let's try to tie it all together. Technology and culture are never not separate. television impacted culture. Obviously, it impacted politics, and the internet certainly has impacted culture and politics in a big way. And I do believe that the broad arc. I believe that both Dalio and Balaji are right in the broad sense, right? So if we could just use those two as backdrops, and the high level of what Balaji says is that many years ago, around the time of the French Revolution, we moved from God to state, and now we're making this transition from state to network, and I think that that's true. So, but still, our human carcasses live in this geographical space, and the notion of politics is we just draw a line on the earth. Yeah. Right. And we go, okay, let's try to elect somebody who represents the ideals of the people within this line. What I always think about with that is I think, when my dad was a kid in Goshen, Indiana, when it was like mostly lower middle class white people in that area, you probably could elect somebody who roughly represented the ideals of those people. But if you go back to Goshen, Indiana today, where today it's 30% Hispanic, you have richer rich and poorer poor in that area, it's probably impossible to, South Bend is only an hour from where I grew up, where Pete Buttigieg was the mayor, maybe still is. I don't know the politics there. I'm sorry. And I think Pete is actually an amazing politician. Does he represent the ideals of all the people in South Bend, Indiana? Absolutely not. It's impossible, right? It's impossible. And that's my point. And so 2021 at the JP Morgan conference in Miami, which is a very surprising place for me to be. Thank you to Raoul Paul for putting me on that stage with well, I'll tell the story later. But with Jamie Dimon sitting right in front of us in 2021. But Mayor Suarez spoke.
Okay.
And he had a very simple message. He was like, "Look, what is my job as mayor? My job is to keep you safe, keep things clean, keep potholes out of the street, kind of, broadly speaking and metaphorically speaking, and then stay the hell out of your way, and to do it with the lowest possible cost base." My thought at that time was, wow, that's a very network state approach to governance, right? Because what you're doing is you're acknowledging that the people inside of your jurisdiction have very different ideals.
Yeah, there's no ideology in that.
Yeah, there's no ideology in it. It's we all want to live in a place which is safe, where we're not under threat and we're not under attack, where things are clean, and if there's a fire, someone is going to come help us out. And if I need healthcare, so healthcare I think is a huge issue that I have no solution for. But you know what I mean? We want safety as human beings, and as and you really don't want the richest to have the best and the poorest to have the worst. Like, you don't want that. I think we can agree on that as those human beings. At the same time, the government should do that with the lowest cost base and without ideology. Without making an ideological judgment. So that is probably libertarianism, but I think that is also in line with the fact that we are moving from state to network, and I would like to have a peaceful transition from state to network. We didn't have a totally peaceful transition from God to state, and we won't have a totally peaceful transition from state to network. And I think the most peaceful would be, frankly, what I heard Mayor Suarez say in 21.
So on this podcast, you are definitely hearing me talk about Bitcoin a lot. Well, why? We live in a really strange time with governments driving inflation with their reckless spending and endless money printing. There is a way out of this. There is a way to protect your money, and that is by stacking Bitcoin. I've made loads of shows about Bitcoin. You can go and research this, you can go and read the books, but the truth is it is the hardest money ever created. If you are interested in protecting your financial future, it's time for you to get on the Bitcoin train. I've been stacking Bitcoin personally and through my businesses since 2017. It's protected me, it's secured my family's future, and it also strengthens all of my businesses. So if you want to start stacking Bitcoin, where do you do it? Well, for me, it's with Gemini. They're a fully licensed, full reserve exchange and custodian, so they give you a secure way for you to buy and own your Bitcoin. There's no risks and no funny business. So if you're serious about stacking Bitcoin the right way, head over to Gemini.com, which is GEMINI.com. I want to talk to you about one of my sponsors, Incogni. And that means we're going to talk about the weird world of spam. And I don't just mean those spam emails that you get day after day from companies you've never heard of and companies you've never signed up to. I'm also talking about those spam phone calls you get from those people who seem to know a little bit too much about you, trying to get your bank details. It's all a bit creepy, right? Now, this all comes from the world of data brokerage. There are companies out there collecting your data, building profiles, and sending that data to anyone who wants it, which is why when one of those scammers phones you up, they seem to know everything about you. Now, I've tried myself to get off these lists, try to get off the phone lists, try to get off the email lists. I unsubscribe from every one of these emails that comes in, but this game of whack-a-mole, it just never ends. And so this is where Incogni comes in. They do all the hard work for you. They reach out to these companies and they will get you legally removed from these lists. And I know because the last time they sponsored my show, I signed up and I didn't take the free option that they offered me. I wanted to pay for it. I wanted to see if you get value for money. And they removed me from 79 data broker lists. And so I've stayed on. I've stayed a subscriber and I have seen a massive decrease in the number of emails and phone calls I've been getting. So it's a great service. I recommend you check it out. If you're sick of this like I was, please head over to incogni.com/Peter and sign up. If you use the code Peter, you will get a lovely 60% discount. So that's incogni.com/Peter. It is very libertarian, but that comes back to, because the people I argue with, I actually think we want the same outcome, which is a fair, safe society, right? And so when you talk about, I don't think we want the richest to have everything and the poorest to have nothing. How do you bridge that gap? Do you bridge that gap through libertarianism and voluntarism? You know, the idea that we allow individuals to create for themselves, and if they've got abundance and they see people struggling in poverty, they go out there and support themselves charitably? Or do you do it through taxation and redistribution?
I think I'm changing my views on this recently. I was talking with John Higgs about this. I'm formulating something here. Let me try it on you as a Brit.
All right, you got 4 minutes.
Yeah, because I think the BBC is really interesting, right? Okay, all right. Let me try this out on you.
Yeah.
I think, all right, let's use the notion of the last economy in that book, and it basically says that ultimately we're going to need to move towards some form of UBI.
Okay.
Right. So let's say that we move towards some form of UBI. I would argue that in some ways the BBC was a form of UBI for a creative class, right? We're going to tax televisions and we're going to make content.
Yes.
Right. And what I love is that, you know, without the BBC, you don't get things like Adam Curtis, which are just like, wow. I'm not sure that Adam Curtis would exist if he had to, you know, pitch that to CBS. Mm-hmm. Right.
That's fair.
And I'm really thankful that exists. And so I think when we look at AI, I feel like here's the thing I'm becoming comfortable with. I'm becoming comfortable with taxation being a bit arbitrary. I'll tell you what I mean. I think that, okay, when you look at something like copyright infringement, right? Let's say that, and it's all about like, what can we agree upon as a society? I think we could probably all agree that if you take, you know, the new, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, the new, you know, U2 record, not that there is one, but if you take the new U2 record and you change the name and you change the album cover and you upload all the same songs to Spotify and you claim it's your record, no. We can agree as society, like that's not the society we want to live in, where you can just kind of like steal and repurpose the U2 record. That's copyright infringement.
Yes.
We can agree. We would also agree that like if you don't like what the New York Times says and you want to write an article about that, you should be able to quote what they say and comment on it.
Yes.
That's called fair use. So these are the kind of like the two extremes. We're never going to agree on the line in the middle.
Yes.
The line in the middle is blurry and we will never agree on it. Let's just agree that it's not a bright yellow line. We're just going to have to kind of make it up. We're going to go, you know what, the line's here.
Yeah.
You know, and we're just going to have to live with it. And that's kind of what we do, right? I mean, I've been through things like, what's the statutory cost of a radio play on the internet? And what I learned is that it's arbitrary. At the end of the day, a court decides it and you just have to live with it as a business. And it sucks, but you kind of build around it. And this is kind of what we do. If you look at like regulation around, like let's say that we get market structure, you know, bill around crypto in the US, which I hope we do this year. There will be things in it that we don't like, right? And we'll have to build around them. And that's part of like, because there are these things that we agree on, but there's a line in the middle that we don't. And then we're going to just have to draw the line somewhere and then we live with it. Well, to that end, I think that, for example, we could agree creative people whose work is ingested into OpenAI, as an example, deserve some percentage of revenue. We're never going to agree on what that percentage is. I bet we could all agree that it's greater than 0 and it's less than 100. That's what we could agree. It's greater than 0 and less than 100. But what we should do, just like the BBC was sort of an arbitrary tax, right, on televisions that ultimately went to a creative class, let's pick a number. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's pick a number. 15%. I don't know. Maybe it's 25%. Maybe it's 30. Maybe it's 2. I don't know. But let's pick a number and give that money to creative people and see what they do with it. And even the giving it to creative people, will it be totally fair? Of course not.
I'm in.
No. There's no way to do it that's totally fair. And what I've found peace with is just saying, yes, it's arbitrary. No, it won't be fair. But yes, it's better than not doing it. So let's fucking go.
I'm with you on that. Do you know what it made me think of? Like, just as a closing out point, have you seen this thing that's been popping up? This fake music where they're taking.
Did I send you the guy that's doing like funk covers of Misfits and AC/DC songs?
You haven't sent me yet.
Fake music _BR, I think, on Instagram. It's my favorite thing. If the Misfunks were playing tonight, we would go. It's so good.
So, I mean, some of them have brought...
Anyone who hates AI music has not heard the Misfunks.
Dude, so this is this funk, soul, jazz version of songs. I had Refuse Resist by Sepultura, and I was like, this is incredible.
Same. That's the guy.
That's the guy. So last night they had Nookie by Limp Bizkit. And I'm like, this is fucking incredible.
So good, right?
And what was the Iron Maiden
And then
song?
he has videos of real people playing drums to the AI song.
Bro, I would go to the concert and watch this because
Absolutely.
And it's weird how it works. Oh man, see, this is
it. This is why these things aren't black and white.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're human beings. Bob Pittman is famous for saying that, people don't fall in love with robots. They fall in love with humans. That's why they had VJs on MTV. And MTV would not be MTV without VJs.
Yeah.
And so there's always a humanness. We as humans will always be, drawn to that. I think it's a question of what exactly is the role of this animal on planet Earth 100 years from now? I think we underestimate how different that is going to be. Even 25 years from now, we're close to AGI, we're close to quantum computing. Look at what's happening in robotics. 25 years from now, the world is unrecognizable. And that will be the world that our kids fight and exist in, just like, we've fought and existed in this one.
I wish we had 7 more hours.
Yeah. Well, let's do it again.
I love you, man.
I love you too. I'll come to Bedford again. I love it there.
Let's do it.
I love coming to Peter McCormack land.
Peter McCormack land. Listen, we will do it again. Appreciate you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We're in France, by the way, if anyone's wondering where we are. We're at the beautiful Ledger studio in France.
Paris.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.